Our first contestant is, at school, deputy head boy, head of learning, captain of the Senior A volleyball team, and outside of school, listen to this, the Zone 5 Regional Under-20 Lawn Bowls Singles Champ. From Ellesmere College, Canterbury, please welcome Benjamin Alsop-ten-Hove.
Your Excellency and distinguished guests, the battle, sir, is not to the strong alone. It is to the vigilant, the active, and the brave. War, the pain, the atrocities. We all know that war is horrific. But there are other aspects to war. The heroism, the saviors, the sacrifice of men who laid down their lives in an effort to bring a greater peace to our planet, a greater peace between our people. One particular man, perhaps New Zealand's greatest hero, Charles Upham, Victoria Cross and Bar. But what is heroism? The greatest war heroes received the VC for gallant actions. But does the medal make the hero, or does the hero make the medal? Heroism is defined by courageous actions during desperate times. I ask you now, what times more desperate than those of war? What actions more courageous than those of men at war? War made heroes of New Zealand men, and New Zealand men made war heroes, just like Charles Upham. The VC is the Commonwealth's highest honour for gallantry. Charles Upham's first VC was received for fighting through over 3,000 yards of well-organised enemy defence, unsupported by any other arms. After taking down 3 separate machine gun posts, he proceeded to rescue a wounded soldier from the field, under fire, before further proceeding to rescue an entire displaced battalion. But for his action, that battalion would have been lost. Those men would have been killed. He fought with a selflessness to his own life that is rarely displayed by men. His leadership and his bravery were an inspiration to entire battalions to fight all the more courageously. His bar was received for a further battle in Greece, where fighting with not 1, but 2 bullet wounds, he and his unit took down a German tank and 2 of the enemy's strongholds with but the regulation guns and hand grenades. His leadership and bravery were again an inspiration, and upon receiving the medal, he said, "It was meant for the men." It is the worst in men that leads to war: selfishness, cruelty, and greed. But sometimes war can bring out the best in men. Men like Charles Upham. But Charles Upham is only one man. One great man, but one man nonetheless. It is estimated that 85 million died during World War II, and 12,000 of those were New Zealanders. 12,000 New Zealand men died during World War II. The heroism, the sacrifice of every man who risked his own life at war for this country is something that should inspire us all. The horrors of war were matched by the heroism of the people who faced those horrors. Charles Upham said it was meant for the men. And in a way, though this was said through his own modesty, it was. So many men remain unnamed, their bravery forgotten, but not unrecognized. Not if together we respect them. Not if together we get up on Anzac morning and remember them. We must remember men like Airman John Coe of Leeston, who at just 23 was involved in a horrific plane crash which cost him his life. We must remember the actions of John Masters, who in Borneo risked his own life, riddled with fever, to carry out injured Gurkha soldier Haile Bassett as far from the front lines as he could, before leaving him with his own supplies and struggling further through the dense forest to the nearest hospital miles on to summon help. The war brought out the best in the men who fought it, but it also brought out the best in the families of those men. Agriculture runs this nation, and with the generation of men lost to the war through those years, we must respect the women who stayed behind and ran our nation whilst the men fought for it. The bravery, the courage that every man and woman in New Zealand displayed during wartime is testimony to the strength that is within us all. The effect on country families, in particular, was great. After talking to the older generation of Ellesmere, men who lost fathers and forefathers to the war, I finally began to understand this. Imagine if your father, your uncle, even your neighbor left for years of service to protect you, and imagine if he didn't come back. This feeling, the feeling I witnessed, humbled me. And this feeling has shaped the way the world is today. The kindness, the respect that is ingrained throughout the generations of those families is something that should inspire us all. The courage, the bravery that men of wars past displayed lit a torch. And to the men in Afghanistan, that torch was passed on. The courage of Charles Upham, of John Coe, and John Masters lives on within the men who fight today. From the men who stood at arms during the Canterbury quakes, which shook us all, to the men who kept the peace in Afghanistan, from Willie Apiata to Corporal Luke Tamatia. These men held the torch that men from Ellesmere, that men from around our nation once held. That torch is illuminated by the courage of New Zealanders. And so long as we, as New Zealanders, stand courageous, that torch will burn forever. And so I give it to you. The battle, sir, is not to the strong alone. It is to the vigilant, the active, and the brave. Thank you.